Ash drifted silently through the skeletal ruins of the forgotten border town. Yun knelt amidst the debris, his fingers brushing against a shattered roof tile. Behind him, Shen stood perfectly still, his eyes scanning the dark perimeter. A low, unnatural rumble vibrated through the cracked earth beneath their boots. Yun stood up quickly, his hand instinctively dropping to the hilt of his basic dagger. Shen placed a calm, steadying hand firmly onto his younger brother's shoulder. In the center of the square, a hidden trapdoor burst open from the pressure below. A blinding pillar of golden light erupted vertically into the darkening sky. Within the brilliant light, the silhouette of an intricate staff floated slowly upward. Yun stepped forward, drawn inexorably toward the radiant divine artifact. Black, shadowy tendrils suddenly crept out from the edges of the ruins. The corrupting energy began to solidify into the shapes of ravenous beasts. Shen drew his twin blades in a single fluid motion that hissed through the air. He lunged forward to intercept the first wave of leaping shadow monsters. Yun ignored the combat behind him and leaped across the widening chasm. His fingers tightly wrapped around the cold, engraved metal of the Shenzen staff. An explosive shockwave of pure spiritual force immediately cascaded outward. Visions of an ancient, fallen guardian deity flashed violently through Yun's mind. The shadow beasts vaporized instantly upon contact with the sacred shockwave. Yun dropped heavily back to his feet, the staff resting firmly in his grip. Shen sheared his weapons and quickly ran over to his brother's side. Tiny glowing runes began to manifest along the surface of the staff. The runes formed a map, pointing directly toward distant, unknown realms. A voice inside the artifact whispered of 72 shattered soul fragments. Shen looked toward the main gate, realizing their quiet life was over. Massive tremors shook the remaining standing walls of the town. The very ground beneath them began to sink into a giant abyss. "We have to leave right now," Shen yelled over the noise. Yun gripped the staff tightly like a walking cane and sprinted forward. A massive fissure ripped through the road directly in front of them. Shen grabbed Yun by his collar and threw him across the gap. Shen then used his immense agility to leap across right after him. They landed hard on the grassy slope outside the town limits. They turned back to watch their childhood home disappear into the earth. The artifact pulsed gently, reminding them of the grand quest ahead. Yun looked down the winding mountain path that led into the unknown. "We will find every single fragment," Yun promised quietly. Shen nodded silently, adjusting the heavy straps of his twin swords. Far ahead in the woods, glowing red eyes suddenly flickered in response. A horrifying screech echoed from a massive cave hidden right beside the path. The horrifying screech from the dark cavern sent a violent shiver straight down Shen's spine. Yun immediately stepped forward, shielding his younger brother while keeping his glowing staff extended. Thick, glistening silk threads hung like heavy curtains across the cavern's yawning entrance. Shen raised his twin daggers, their polished steel catching the faint spiritual glow of the staff. The brothers advanced into the gloom, stepping carefully to avoid the sticky tendrils coating the floor. Farther inside, pulsating clusters of pale blue light revealed the presence of the coveted soul fragments. A sudden skittering sound echoed from the high ceiling, causing both boys to halt instantly. A monstrous arachnid with multifaceted red eyes dropped down from the darkness above. Yun swung the Shenzen staff in a wide arc, unleashing a brilliant wave of golden energy. The radiant blast struck the monster's armored carapace, forcing it back with a high-pitched hiss. Seizing the moment, Shen darted forward and executed a flawless low slide beneath the beast. He slashed upward viciously, severing two of the creature's massive hairy legs at the joints. The giant spider collapsed heavily onto its side, twitching violently before going completely still. Shen wiped his brow with the back of his hand, letting out a heavy sigh of relief. Clapping hands suddenly resonated from the shadows of a connecting tunnel ahead. Out stepped a tall, scarred man wearing rugged armor adorned with stolen imperial badges. Dozens of heavily armed rogue bandits emerged from the darkness, completely surrounding the two brothers.
You boys did the hard work for us.
The bandit leader sneered, pointing his blade at Yun's staff. Yun tightened his grip on the Shenzen staff, its golden inscriptions flaring with defensive magic. These soul fragments belong to the fallen guardian, not to low-life thieves, Yun barked back. The bandit leader gestured wildly, ordering his men to charge the brothers at once. 3 heavily armored bandits rushed forward, swords raised high to strike down the young hunters. Yun slammed the base of his staff onto the ground, creating a powerful shockwave that shattered the rocky floor. The advancing bandits lost their footing as the earth beneath them erupted violently. Shen leaped off his brother's shoulder, soaring high through the air above the disorganized crowd. He brought his daggers down in a spinning strike, disarming 2 bandit archers in the rear. The bandit leader roared in frustration and swung his massive broadsword directly at Yun's head. The heavy blade sliced through a thick support web, causing a cascade of loose boulders to crash down. Shen parried a sudden spear thrust from a rogue, his small frame straining against the brute force. Yun spun his staff rapidly, creating a defensive shield of golden energy that deflected a hail of arrows. With a fierce battle cry, Yun pushed forward, driving the glowing tip of his staff into the leader's chest. The bandit chief gasped as the pure spiritual energy cracked his iron breastplate and sent him flying backward. Seeing their leader easily overpowered, the remaining rogue bandits began to panic and retreat. Shen lowered his daggers, his chest heaving heavily as the adrenaline began to fade. Yun approached the central pillar where the cluster of blue soul fragments floated silently. As he raised his hand, the blue fragments drifted down naturally, absorbing into the top of the Shenzen staff. A radiant pulse of combined gold and blue energy swept through the cavern, dissolving all remaining webs. "We did it, brother," Shen said with a bright smile, looking at the newly empowered staff. Suddenly, the entire cavern began to tremble violently as an unnatural crimson portal tore open in the center. A massive dark shadowy hand extended from the vortex, grabbing Shen by the ankle before anyone could react. The massive shadowy arm yanked Shen backward into the swirling black vortex before he could even scream for help. Yun slammed his heavy golden staff into the ground to anchor himself against the sudden gale. He lunged forward with all his might, grabbing his brother's outstretched hand just in time. With a fierce battle cry, Yun unleashed a pulse of golden spiritual energy that shattered the shadowy hand completely. The brothers tumbled backward onto the solid stone floor as the dark vortex collapsed into nothingness. They scrambled to their feet only to realize that the cavern exit led to a steep cliff overlooking a strange new realm. Below them stretched a sprawling industrial metropolis made of rusted iron, massive pipes, and burning furnaces. Thick black smoke blanketed the mechanical skyline, and the sound of heavy pistons echoed through the air. Yun gestured toward a metallic pathway that descended directly into the heart of the Iron City. As they entered the lower sectors, they noticed that the streets were completely abandoned and covered in ash. Suddenly, a deep rumble shook the ground beneath them, far louder than any machine in the area. The sky above split open as a massive flaming meteor tore through the thick cloud cover. The meteor smashed into a nearby storage complex, creating a massive shockwave of fire and twisted metal. More meteors began raining down across the metropolis, transforming the city into a chaotic war zone. Yun pulled his brother under a heavy reinforced steel platform to take shelter from the falling debris. Through the smoke, Shen spotted a massive central citadel glowing with an unnatural, icy blue light. That glowing structure stood perfectly safe, unaffected by both the flames and the cataclysmic meteor bombardment. Yun realized that the next soul fragment must be located inside that heavily protected central citadel. They dashed out into the open plaza, jumping over ruptured steam vents and molten metal conduits. A large chunk of an exploding skyscraper fell directly toward them, forcing Shen to draw his twin blades. With a rapid cross slash, Shen sliced the falling iron beam into harmless pieces that scattered harmlessly. They arrived at the massive iron gates of the citadel, which were freezing over with thick layers of frost. Yun shattered the frozen locks with a single concentrated strike from his divine golden staff. The heavy doors creaked open slowly, revealing an immense throne room made entirely of black iron and ice. At the far end of the hall sat a massive figure in dark armor, surrounded by glowing veins of corrupted energy. This was the tragic ruler of the city, whose mind had been entirely shattered by the power of the soul fragment. As the brothers stepped inside, the tyrant raised his head and unleashed a deafening mechanical roar. The tyrant drew an immense greatsword that pulsed with a dangerous combination of fire and ice. Yun swung his staff into a combat stance, signaling Shen to flank the massive warrior from the left. The ruler lunged forward with surprising speed, bringing his massive blade down toward Yun's head. Yun blocked the devastating strike with his staff, causing the entire floor to crack beneath his boots. Seizing the moment, Shen zipped behind the tyrant, executing a flurry of quick slashes across his armor. The tyrant grunted as blue energy spilled from his wounded armor, but he quickly spun around to backhand Shen away. Shen flew across the room, crashing heavily against a pillar but managing to stay on his feet. Yun focused all his remaining spiritual energy into the tip of his staff, making it glow like a small sun. He thrust the staff directly into the chest plate of the tyrant, unleashing a concentrated beam of purifying light. The corrupted dark armor shattered completely, revealing a peaceful soul that smiled before dissolving into white mist. Hovering where the ruler once sat was a glowing crystalline sphere known as the frozen core. Yun reached out and gently caught the frozen core, feeling its ancient power stabilize the surrounding area. Suddenly, the frozen core turned blood red in Yun's hands, and a massive chasm tore open directly beneath their feet. The shifting stone blocks disintegrated into dust as Yun lost his footing above the deep dark abyss. Shen extended his arm downward, gripping his brother's wrist just before the platform completely vanished. With a powerful heave, the older brother pulled them both onto a stable rocky outcrop away from the falling debris. Below them, a rushing subterranean current of glowing teal water illuminated the entire cavern complex. The gentle mist rising from the magical river instantly began to soothe the burns on Yun's hands. Shen unbuckled the ancient twin blades from his back and placed them gently onto the damp shoreline stones. The water patterns began to swirl around the submerged steel, drawing out centuries of dormant spiritual energy. Bright white runes etched into the metal surface flashed to life, projecting ancient symbols into the air. Yun stepped forward, closing his eyes as he synchronized his heartbeat with the pulsing rhythm of the weapon. The ancestral spirits of their clan manifested in the vapor, bowing silently to the two young heirs. With a sudden burst of energy, the twin blades flew directly into the brothers' outstretched hands. The weapon's true legacy was finally unlocked, surging through their veins with unyielding divine warmth. Turning away from the sacred waters, they ascended a long winding staircase toward the surface world. The majestic spires of Shan City loomed ahead, their golden roofs gleaming brightly under the morning sun. The brothers blended into the bustling market crowds, keeping their hoods pulled down low. Armored guards carrying crimson banners patrolled every street corner with absolute scrutiny. A mysterious informant slipped a wax-sealed letter into Shen's pocket before vanishing into the crowd. Shen broke the seal inside a secluded tavern alcove, revealing the treacherous plot of the city's Grand Council. The corrupt lords intended to seize the remaining soul fragments to fuel their own military machines. Yun tightened his grip on his staff, knowing they had to strike before the midnight assembly. As night fell, the two hunters scaled the outer walls of the Grand Palace without a sound. They bypassed the courtyard guards by moving seamlessly through the high wooden rafters of the main hall. Inside the inner sanctum, the final shard of the Guardian's soul floated inside a heavy glass containment field. Suddenly, the Grand Chancellor stepped out from the shadows, flanked by dozens of elite spellcasters. Yun dropped down from the rafters, landing heavily on the marble floor with his staff poised for battle. The spellcasters unleashed a coordinated volley of dark energy bolts directly toward the brothers. Shen spun his twin blades with incredible speed, creating an impenetrable shield of pure silver light. Yun charged forward through the barrier, using the golden staff to shatter the Chancellor's magical shield. The Chancellor attempted to drain the soul fragment's power directly into his own body to survive. Joining their weapons together, Yun and Shen unleashed a synchronized ultimate strike born of familial bond. The pure combined force completely shattered the corrupt mechanism and neutralized the Chancellor's dark magic. The final soul fragment drifted gently down into Yun's open palm, pulsing with a serene warmth. All 72 fragments gathered across their long journey began to circle around the divine staff. the magnificent form of the fallen guardian deity manifested in the sky, completely restored and whole. A gentle wave of purifying light washed over the entire world, expelling the dark chaos forever. The spirit of the guardian smiled down at the brothers, granting them a final blessing of eternal peace. With their monumental task completed, the brothers stood side by side, looking out over the peaceful land. The ancient staff, now resting quietly in its sheath, would never need to fight again. Yoon and Shen turned back toward their old hometown, ready to live out their lives in true harmony. The long, arduous awakening of the Shenzen staff had finally come to its perfect and definitive end.